Chair Lee, we're ready when you are.
Call the February 4th, 2026 Planning Commission meeting to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Bedard?
Present.
Commissioner Malikoff?
Present.
Commissioner McPhail?
Present.
Vice Chair Mead?
Here.
Chair Lee.
Present. Thank you. Move to the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand as you are able and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving to agenda finalization, do we have any changes to the published agenda?
I believe we do, Chair.
Yes, with respect to the non-public hearing items, staff is recommending that we switch items 4A and 4B such that we are taking the code compliance operations presentation first and then the presentation on building a defensible record in a public hearing.
Thank you. Any objection? See none. So we will move item 4B before item 4A on the agenda. Move to approval of minutes, the approval of the December 17th, 2025 meeting minutes.
Chair Lee, before we move to the
Oh, I'm
approval
sorry.
minutes, let's go ahead and open it
I
up
missed
for
a
public
bit.
comments.
Thank
And
you.
if you're okay with that, I'll go ahead and read the statement of
Yes,
participation.
please do.
This is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on any items not appearing on the regular agenda. Because of restrictions contained in California law, the Commission may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements made or ask a question for clarification. The chairman may also request a brief response from staff to questions raised during public comment or may request that a matter be agendized for a future meeting. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on items that are not on the agenda? I see none, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So moving to item 2, approval of minutes, approval of the December 17th, 2025 meeting minutes. Are there any changes or corrections for the minutes? Seeing none, are there any public comments on the minutes?
I did not receive any request to speak forms on the minutes. If you'd like to comment on the minutes, please raise your hand. And I see none.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve and second?
Move approval, and I'd like to give a gold star to whoever did it because they were really thorough this time.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner McPhail, a second by Vice Chair Mead. Please vote. Motion carries, all ayes.
And I just have to second Commissioner McPhail's comments. This is the most complete set of minutes I think I've ever seen at a city meeting, and I hope is an indicator of things to come. Thank you. So I'm moving on to item 3 on our agenda, public hearing items. I move to agenda item 3A, conditional use permit 24-0004, a request of Eurotech Construction to establish a 4,200 square foot auto body repair shop and office with a spray booth at an existing auto repair facility located at 36711 Cathedral Canyon Drive. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, we do. All right. Good evening, Chair Lee and Vice Chair Mead and the commissioners. My name is Manuel Rocha, Assistant Planner here at the City of Cathedral City. Today I bring before you conditional use permit number 24-0004, which is a request from Eurotech Constructions to establish a 4,200 square foot auto body and collision repair shop with a spray booth, storage, and office within 3 existing buildings. So the proposed project is located at 36711 Cathedral Canyon Drive. The property is zoned commercial business park with the general plan designation of business park. The property was previously occupied by Billington's RV repair. Auto repair is a permitted use on this property. However, the applicant is proposing an auto body and collision repair service use, including vehicle painting, which requires approval of a CUP for this use. So here you will see a view of the project site along Cathedral Canyon Drive. Here you will see the proposed site plan for the auto body and collision repair facility, which will include 5 service bays, with one of the bays containing the proposed spray booth, along with a building for shop storage and a building used for office space. Site improvements include the installation of a block wall along the northern and southern property boundary, the construction of a trash enclosure in compliance with the city standard, the addition of landscaping, metal shade structures for shaded parking, and the addition of a manual perforated iron sliding gate along Cathedral Canyon Drive to screen the outdoor storage of vehicles. The project requires for a total of 6 stalls. Per the shading requirement in the design guidelines, 50% of the parking stalls are required to be shaded. Parking lot shading can be accommodated through shade trees or covered parking spaces. So here the applicant is proposing 13 on-site parking stalls, including 1 ADA accessible stall. However, to comply with the parking shade requirement, the applicant is being requested to reduce the total number of parking stalls so that with the construction of 2 new shade structures and the existing one on site, shade can be provided for a total of 6 parking stalls, meeting that requirement. The new shade structures would be located at the south end of the site, where parking stalls 2 through 10 are located. The proposed metal shade structures will be reflected on the site plan as part of the construction permit review process. So here you'll see the shade structure the applicant is proposing to construct to provide the shading for the stalls. The structures measure 20 feet by 20 feet with a roof peak height of 12 feet. As mentioned, there's currently one of these shade structures existing on the site, which is shown here. Here you will see the existing floor plan for the 3 existing buildings on the site. The auto body repair facility consists of 5 service bays, with one of the bays containing the proposed spray booth, as mentioned, and totaling approximately 1,700 square feet, along with 1,400 square feet of shop storage in Building 3 and 1,100 square feet of office space in Building 1. The spray booth will be located in the highlighted area shown here. The photos seen here are existing elevations of the buildings located on the site. The buildings were repainted 2 years ago. The exteriors consist of a painted stucco in a Dover white color. The existing roll-up bay doors on building number 2 will remain the current slate tile color. The proposed spray booth located inside building 2 will require a stuccoed screen exhaust extending 6 feet above the highest roof elevation. The exhaust screening will be painted in a Dover white to match the existing building color, which you see here. There are no additional proposed modifications to the existing buildings. The area available for landscaping on the property is minimal. However, new desert landscaping will be installed within the planter area along the right-of-way of Cathedral Canyon Drive. The landscaping will include barrel cactus and agave. The proposed ground cover in the landscape area is gravel. The gravel will be required to be a 3/8 inch in size. So Platinum Auto Repair does have an open code compliance case for operating without a valid business license, as they were required to obtain a conditional use permit due to the addition of auto body and collision repair services. So staff is requesting the addition of a condition of approval as follows. So condition number 3.15, within 3 months of approval, the applicant shall apply for a business license and all required construction and related permits. Failure to comply will result in enforcement action. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission find the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to section 15301, class number 1, existing facilities, and approve conditional use permit number 240004, subject to the attached conditions of approval and based on the findings contained in the staff report.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Moving on to questions from the commission. So, any questions for on the staff report? Yes, Commissioner Malakoff. Oh, okay, sure.
As we're improving our downtown and the view of the amphitheater is directly into this space, and we would like to have more shade on our streets, is it possible to get at least a single tree closer to the sidewalk that would provide shade for the public and to soften the view from the amphitheater?
This is definitely something we can look into if you guys want to discuss that, potentially including a tree. The space, I will say the space is a bit minimal for a tree, so we would also have to see if that would, a tree would be feasible in that area.
So my suggestion is to actually put, if I think with my minimal landscaping background, that you could actually fit 2 Palo Verdes in that space. The branches would touch, could be planted closer to the sidewalk and offer shade onto the sidewalk area. Palo Verdes have a very small trunk. Their width can be, they don't have a problem touching or going into each other, or a tree of their choice. But that would be nice to look out from the amphitheater and not see that what's currently there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Malakoff.
Thank you, Commissioner Bedard. I had written a question on that same exact subject, so I too would like to see a minimum of 2 trees put in that along Cathedral Canyon. I think that it's very important to make sure that our corridors have enough street trees to make these projects look really good. Where's the vacant lot?
You might be referring to the project being presented later today. Item B. I believe you're referring to the project.
Okay, I'm sorry, I got mixed up. Okay, so that question will come later. Then the other question I had for Mr. Corella is NPDS and the flood control that we do, they're the same thing, but they're not required to have any kind of water retention on site?
That's correct. This is an existing site, and when you already have a site that already has all impermeable surfaces, they're not creating any new impervious surfaces. So it's on existing sites. If they're not creating any new, then the water is running off in the street now. It's going to run off in the street later. And we just work with them on their new site plan and their repaving to make sure it goes out the driveway.
So if I'm correct, then the whole point of the WQMP is to manage any new water that you're creating, which they're not really doing based on the fact that they're keeping the permeable surfaces that they already have. So they're exempt from, when they turn in their plans to engineering, from having to do a WQMP?
Correct.
Okay, and I think that was my next issue was not on this project, so I'll wait.
Commissioner McPhail.
Just a couple of questions. The new element that's happening here that's requiring a CUP is the spraying, is that right? But what's causing the need for a CUP here? Was it just auto spraying or something else?
The addition of auto repair and auto collision repair.
And what do they do now?
I'm sorry?
What do they do now on that site?
So that's what they will be doing with the approval of this. Currently, they are actively in business.
Yes.
However, when they first came in to apply for a business license, they weren't aware of the need for a CUP.
Oh,
So
okay.
a decision was made to allow them to operate while they were in the process of the CUP.
All right. Okay. I guess the question that popped up for me also about that condition 3.15, do they have a business license at the moment, or are they
They will be applying as soon as
so
this approval.
they're operating without a business license, without a CUP at the moment?
Correct.
Okay. I think the improvements look very good. I drove past today, and you know the southern side that you can see on your view there. It's a pretty loose fence, and you can see all those cars crammed in there. So if they're going to stripe this to have a smaller number of cars, and I think it will beautify this area a little bit. And I don't know much about plants, but I would concur with my other two colleagues that if we could get some more greenery and trees on there, that would be a nice improvement too.
We're not going to require a certain kind of Palo Verde tree, but we need to make sure it's not a multi-trunk, because then that won't fit. So like the museum, Palo Verde wouldn't be a good fit there because it's multi-trunk. So it needs to be a single trunk Palo Verde.
Thank you. Vice Chair Mead.
I have some questions about the spraying. Obviously, there was discussion of the exhaust. There's mention of the exhaust in the staff report. There's a picture of the exhaust on the plans and the elevation, but there's nothing that I see in the conditions of approval about what type of exhaust, how well the exhaust has to function. My assumption is that at the addition of painting will be releasing some sort of chemicals into the air. It is, as Commissioner Bedard noted, near the amphitheater, so I just wanted to know what type of exhaust system is it? How well does it function? Are there any requirements for that?
So the city
Compliance
does not,
involved?
the city doesn't have any specific requirements for exhaust. However, they do need to go through the proper permitting process with the state, which I believe is the AQMD, the
Okay.
Air Quality Management. I'm not sure.
South Coast Air Quality.
That's correct.
Management District.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't need to have anything in our conditions because the state handles those.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. It was my only concern.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I can clarify. They will need to get a building permit, and part of that building permit is providing the AQMD permits. So we do have some level of review as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, and back to Commissioner Bedard.
Yeah, I'm a little sensitive because this area it is visually right through the fence. Could you go back to the slide that is showing the street view? One more, yeah, there. So barrel cactus, in my opinion, don't suffice at all. Really low to the ground, don't provide much impact. There's that wall that you can see to the left. It would be great to have maybe some tacomas that would grow up against that, or bougainvillea, or something like that, that would add some sort of texture, color, and depth from the visual, from the amphitheater in that space. I believe you also mentioned, if you go to the parking plan, so you also mentioned the shade cover that would be repeating what's existing, and I think you said trees, but I'm struggling to see where any trees are indicated on this plan.
No, it would solely be the shade.
Just be shade cover. Okay. For the benefit of the employees, there are a couple places where you can fit. It would be a little tight, but you could fit trees. It would just make it a nicer work environment. It would also be more beneficial for when people come to the space. I do have a question. Are people, when they come and do the check-in, or they're dropping off their car, or they're picking up, that's all in the office building, correct?
Correct.
Is there any other additional waiting area, or is it just there?
In terms of,
Like if they, how many people does that, how large is the interior going to be? I know you said 1,000 square feet. That's not that much with desks and stuff like that. Is there a lobby area? I would assume there is.
Yes.
Are there chairs and seats in that lobby area where people can wait for their car to be brought over to them or something? Like, or is it all indoors? There's no other place where people will be milling about on the property, correct? The public won't be beyond the office.
yeah, so Commissioner Bedard, the office space does consist of a lobby area with seats for those individuals that are waiting for their vehicle.
Okay. Again, we're big on trees. We want to reduce the heat island effect. If there's a way that we can fit a tree somewhere in at the end of a parking place or something, again, it would have to be a trunky tree, as Commissioner Malakoff suggested, that's not going to spread into the space where people need to park or walk. A trunky tree that has a significant height to it would be nice to see.
What you might want to look into, is it okay?
Go ahead.
You might want to look into either a Tipuana tipu or an Italian cypress, which are both very tall trees, but they are narrow. So they're not considered canopy trees, but they might fit the need for what Commissioner Bedard is asking for, so that you could fit them in.
Loquats and locust would do the job as well. Loquats are good street trees. They grow nice and tall. They provide a broad canopy. They don't interfere. That's why we could use them on sidewalks with parking areas and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. And I think the takeaway is that when the landscape plan is being reconsidered, those comments should be also considered. On top of the comments from other people, I think it's covered all my concerns. I did have the concern about the exhaust, and because I'm sensitive on another angle, which is odor, and is there going to be any odor that's coming out of this plant, any VOCs? But that, I guess, is covered also by the air quality, yeah. In which case, that's good. I have no further questions. At this point, I'll open the public hearing. And do we have any members of the public that wish to comment?
Chair Lee, first I'll ask if the applicant is present and wants to speak. No. Okay, and before I do call the other comments, I do have one comment for the record. It was received and provided to the members of the Planning Commission, provided at the entrance for public inspection. Shauna McGolan expressed the need for improvements in the area of the proposed project before additional development.
Excuse me.
Sorry, I think that's on our next item.
I have for 3A.
It's 3B. That's the one on Date Palm.
Yeah, that's it.
Apologies, I wrote the wrong item.
That's
I
all
will
right.
reread that under item 3B.
Okay.
Okay, I do have one member of the public who would wish to speak. Michael Sween. If you could please come up to the lectern, sir.
Well, the only concern is, the aesthetics, I guess, of this project. What's it going to look like? And you mentioned trees and stuff. They could use rolling potters too, you know. I mean, that's another option. That's what I was seeing. You're talking about trees and stuff. Definitely need trees. This isn't going to affect me as much as I think the next project is going to affect me, because I'm not in this area. But I can see that it looks, when I'm looking at the picture, it really looks bad. It's an auto lot that's, the gray buildings and stuff like that. I don't know if they could paint them or do something to them to, I don't know, make it more aesthetically appealing. Definitely make it, the outside, the small barrel cactuses, I agree with what I was hearing there. A little too small. Need something a little taller. So definitely can agree there. That's basically it.
Thank you.
Are there any other members who wish to comment on this item? And I see none, Chair.
In which case, I'll close the public hearing and move to discussion of the commission. Could I have a motion in order to open discussion?
I'd like to make a motion that we find the project exempt from CEQA pursuant to Section 15301 and approve conditional permit number 24-004, subject to the findings in the staff report, and add conditions specifically to add trees in the front and in the parking lot that are trees in the parking lot and in the front. And that would be my motion.
I'll second.
If I can
Thank
step
you.
in, if we can also include the condition for the
Yes.
3-month
Yes.
approval.
Oh, and then,
We need to add 3.15.
and the condition proposed by staff, 3.15.
Okay, and we open discussion on that item.
I guess the only thing I would say is regarding a condition about trees, do we know for sure it's even feasible to have trees? We think it is, but we don't know. Should we be so black and white as saying you must have a tree as a condition?
Yeah,
Yes,
my
absolutely.
comment would be along the same lines that, I think we all want to see better landscaping. And they should consider the addition of trees where appropriate. But I think if we add that as a definite condition, then they can't go ahead without the trees. And
I
we're not
disagree.
specifying the number of trees, So the application itself to make these changes and to open this business, I don't think you can make it entirely reliant on having a certain number of trees. We can say that the landscaping should consider it.
We didn't give them a certain number of trees. We just had to place trees in the front area and in the parking lot. And it would be per staff. If for some reason, because of an easement or because of a pipeline or not having enough room, then staff would make that decision. But in my experience, if it doesn't fit in one area, it can fit in another. So it's not specific that they have to do 3 trees or 4. It's that they have to put some trees in the parking area and in the front. And the rest would be left to staff.
And I highly agree. We need to do something about this. Is in our downtown core. It's not very attractive. The more green we can get around that area, the better. It's environmentally responsible and it lowers our heat index. So there are ways to do this where a tree does not require much of a footprint. So I think the condition of adding trees is very doable, and I think the staff would have to figure that out. Hopefully our owner is hearing us and understanding that we are in this downtown area and that what it looks like and what their business looks like is important, and they'll be excited about, there's some head nods over there, that they'll actually be excited and eager to plant more trees.
Mr. Chair?
Vice Chair Mead?
I generally agree with us trying to get something that would encourage more trees, maybe more so than just encouraging it. I mean, I think maybe we can find a middle ground of saying that we have a condition that they include 2 trees on the property and leave it up to them and staff to figure out, so maybe they have a little more flexibility or something along those lines, so that we're not dictating where and what kind of trees. I don't know, I'm just open to it being a little bit more flexible while still trying to meet the same goal, because I generally agree with what you're aiming to do.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of flexibility. I don't think we're necessarily saying exactly where, but.
Well, I'm a little bit concerned about saying there must be a tree, and then staff and the applicant look and say, we cannot physically do it because of reasons X, Y, and Z. And then we have an actual condition in there saying you can't finish this until you get a tree in, but we can't put a tree in. So I would like to see a tree. I just don't know, because I'm not an expert in this, our staff are, to have some kind of wording so it's not like there must be a tree. It's like staff will work with them to ensure and to try and get a tree in there somehow, some way, but not to say there must be one.
So the motion as it stands says that there should be a tree in 2 different locations, is what you said.
It didn't say a number of trees. It just said,
No, but you said trees in 2 locations. One,
Yes.
I'm sorry, can you give us back the motion? Do you have it?
I don't have it word for word.
He said I think that it was on the front of the property and in the parking lot. is
Right,
what was
so
said,
that was
yes.
2 locations that you mentioned there had to be trees.
well, I feel that's fairly flexible, that the front needs to have something. And I think it's big enough that they should be able to fit trees. We didn't say 2 trees, we didn't say 3. We said there should be trees along the front, along Cathedral Canyon, which we need to take care of as one of our major corridors. and then at least, and then trees where you can fit them in the parking lot. And we suggested 2 varieties that are tall and thin that they could use, that'll be in the minutes. But I don't think we're holding them up at all. I think they can work with staff. It's very flexible, the language. It just says you need to provide some trees in the front parkway and in the parking area.
Can I ask a question of staff and maybe the city attorney? If we do put this in the conditions, and for some reason they try to dig a tree and they discover there's a metal grate 2 inches below the dirt, and they can't put a tree in, is that going to hold up the whole project, or can staff change the conditions at that point so they can move forward without having to come back to us?
If the condition's that specific, then it kind of limits us. But I do appreciate the flexible language that Vice Chair Mead added, because I do see the merit of improving the streetscape, and we can work with the applicant to accommodate 1 tree, 2 tree if we can. It is a narrow planter, so we want to be able to look at that closely with them and with their landscape architect, so I do appreciate that flexibility. With regard to adding trees in the rear parking lot, our code does provide the option of providing the shade via trees or providing the shade via cover, and because that area doesn't have irrigation running to it, it would have more improvements than just planting a tree. That's why they went with the route of the shade structures.
So I'd suggest on that advice that we do this. We take the basic motion, we look at Vice Chair Mead's addition of saying 2 trees on the property, and we leave it up to staff to work with the applicant to get at least, well, let's say at least 2 trees.
I mean, I would even say at least 1 tree. Right now, there's none. So, I mean, I think we want...
2.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be as flexible as possible.
Right.
So I'm saying, even if we said at least 1, that would probably get us 1 along the street. If they could fit 2, great, but...
Well, and our public comment suggested a pot, like a large pot with a tree in it. Like,
Also
if you
possible.
can't put it in the ground, put it in a pot. Like, those things are highly doable. You go to malls and you see trees that are enormous trees at like 3-foot diameter pots. It's easy to fit a 3-foot diameter pot into the parking area. So I think, again, some of our concern, there are ways to move around it easily. If we wanted to add the words within reason at the end of the trees, and then it's open to them. But we also have our applicant here, and I'm wondering if the applicant is even amenable. Like, does the applicant like the idea?
We're past the
Understood.
public hearing, so we're not going to go back to the applicant.
We could if you decided you want to, Chair. And the gentleman is nodding his head emphatically.
I think we're worrying too much about, I've never seen a site where we have as flexible of a condition as with the way we phrased it, that they can't comply with it. And if you say 1 tree, then they're just going to put in 1 tree. So I think if you say that we want a tree in one area and the other, then they'll provide the trees at least a minimum in those areas, which is what we're looking for. If it's impossible to, I've never seen a site where it's impossible to plant a tree, and I don't think it'll hold up the project whatsoever. If they pick a place and it can't go there for whatever reason, let's say they pick a place and it's in the corner cutoff and it doesn't meet the public works requirements, there's another location they can pick. So I really don't think that we're going to hold them up at all.
Okay, so
I would just quickly say I'm more concerned with the frontage. I agree. I think the frontage is very important because it is our primary corridor. We're getting into downtown. Because they have the shade structures in the parking lot, I'm less concerned about the parking lot. Well, it would be nice, I agree with you, but I would be more concerned about the front area.
Yeah. Okay, so we obviously have a difference of opinion. I think the easiest thing to do here, and we do need to restate an actual motion in this case, is to take a vote on that motion. If that fails, we can go on to a substitute motion, I believe. Yes. So...
If I wanted to bring up anything else, do I need to bring it up now, or It's unrelated to trees.
Yeah, you need to bring it up.
Is it, well, no, because,
Yes, you do.
so,
Because if this motion passes, then there's no opportunity for
Right.
me to bring it up. So I am a little concerned about the fact that they've been operating without a business license, and I know, and they're still operating without a business license. I'm not trying to be punitive at all. I'm not saying we should be. But you noted that one of the conditions was that in 3 months, they had to have a business license, otherwise they would be subject to enforcement. That would be the same for anybody, right? I mean, I guess I'm just wondering, are we treating this any differently because they've been operating without, because not just without the permit, but what you're saying without a business license, period, they've been operating. Is that correct?
Correct.
Why are we giving them 3 months? Like, if they're operating currently, why are they not being forced to get a business license like tomorrow?
So that condition can be modified if you guys would like to reduce the time. The reason we chose 3 months is we believe it's reasonable amount of time for them to, at least when it comes to the construction plans, the construction permit, to gather all the plans together, get their engineering done, and provide that to the building department.
Right, I'm not saying for the new business, I'm saying for the existing business.
Yes.
You're saying they're operating an existing business without a business license. That is correct,
If I
yes?
c- Yes, and if I can clarify that, so what the use that used to be there previously was an auto repair business. And so Platinum does repair an auto body, and the auto body is what triggered the conditional use permit requirement. They can apply for a business license, it just cannot be approved because they have to meet the requirements of the conditions for that business license to be finalized. So they can apply for it, it just won't get approved until they complete everything. So what we wanted to do is provide that timeline to ensure, because, the CUP to approve for 24 months, we want them to move faster than that, given the time that they've been in business. And so that's why we put the condition, or recommending the condition that within 3 months, they submit their construction drawings so that then we can plan check them, get them approved, and they can do their work. Because they have tried to get permits for certain improvements, but it's the use permit that's been going through the process that hasn't allowed them to do that.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. The business that they're operating right now, because it's not a permitted use, they can't get a business license today? That is the issue? Okay. Because that's where I was getting confused. I was like, why can't they just get a business license for the current business? All right, that makes more sense. Thank you. That addresses my
And
concern.
when they originally came in, they had applied for a business license.
Got it.
And that's when they were notified that a conditional use permit was required.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm satisfied. You can move forward.
all right, thank you. So I need to determine exactly what the motion is before the commission.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, we are acting on the original motion as stated.
Yes.
And so I believe I heard to approve the recommendation with an addition of a tree to the front.
And the
Stephanie,
rear.
And the rear.
And the,
And the 3.1.
and condition, new condition
Addition
3.15.
3.15.
And it was a
So
minimum of 2 trees.
that wasn't in the motion stated.
No, I didn't say
That's
that.
why I'm asking for clarification, because we can't vote unless we know what we're voting on. Okay,
Are we clear?
yes, so it was the original motion plus 1 tree in the front, 1 tree in the rear.
No,
In the parking lot.
Would you like to restate?
Yeah.
it was that trees be planted in the front planter and in the parking lot, and the addition of condition 3.15. There was never, I didn't want to stick with a number. Just leave it to them to come up with the number, but in the 2 areas.
Okay. All right, everybody clear on what the current motion is?
So we have trees in general. It could be 1, it could be 3, it could be 10.
It could be any number,
Any
but
number.
at
In
least
2
one in
locations.
each
In
of
2
those
places.
locations. Okay? All right. In which case, we can move to a vote.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Malakoff, a second by Commissioner Bedard. Please vote. Okay. Motion carries 3-2.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 3B, conditional use permit 25-0004, a request of JP Custom Contractors to establish a 3,274 square foot auto repair shop and office within an existing building on property zoned planned community commercial and located at 34870 Date Palm Drive. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes.
You look familiar.
Yeah, I'm back. Good evening again. My name is Manuel Rocha, Assistant Planner here at the City of Cathedral City. I bring before you conditional use permit number 25-0004, which is a request from JP Custom Contractors to establish an auto repair shop and office space in an existing building. The proposed project is located at 34870 Date Palm Drive. The property is zoned planned community commercial with the general plan designation of general commercial. The surrounding land uses include residential areas to the east and west of the project site, with commercial uses located to the north and south. So here you will see the proposed site and landscape plan, which will include the existing 3,274 square foot building, which will be used as an auto repair shop with storage space and 2 additional suites that may be used for office space. Site improvements will include the installation of a new tubular steel fence along the eastern property boundary, construction of a city standard trash enclosure, refreshed landscaping throughout the site, and installation of additional site lighting. The applicant proposes 12 parking stalls, including 1 ADA stall within the site, meeting the number of required parking stalls. Desert landscaping will be provided throughout the project site, including the planter area located along the right-of-way of Date Palm Drive. The plants will include trees such as the Sonora Palo Verde and the Mulga, and shrubs such as smooth agave, coral bells, and the green desert spoon. In the final landscape plan, an additional shade tree will be required in the rear planter area to provide shade for 1 additional parking stall, ensuring compliance with the requirement for the 50% shaded parking. So that will actually go where the red square is located here. So here's a proposed floor plan. The auto repair facility will consist of 3 service bays totaling approximately 1,700 square feet, along with 1,500 square feet of shop storage and 2 suites that may be used as office space. The photos seen here are existing and proposed elevations. The site was previously occupied by SR Appliances. The current building and site will be refreshed for the proposed auto repair and office space use. The buildings will be refreshed with a modern architectural design, focusing on the west elevation that includes stone and stucco materials. Additionally, the applicant is proposing the addition of a wood-toned stucco pop-out wall at the top left corner of the facade, which you see here where my arrow is pointing. The proposed color scheme of the building includes a painted stucco in a gray beige, tan, and brown color. The existing roll-up doors for the bays will remain as is. I would like to acknowledge that there was a public comment expressing concern that adding an auto repair to an already deteriorated block without first addressing existing conditions could further detract from the appearance of the main corridor. So the proposed project here does include several site improvements, as mentioned, which would improve the existing site conditions and enhance the overall appearance of the corridor. So Commissioner Malakoff raised the idea of further improving the east elevation for the residents in the community that faces Eagle Canyon Drive. As shown here, the existing landscape along the Eagle Canyon Drive right-of-way is in need of replanting, and the entry gate requires repainting. So in response, staff is requesting the addition of the following condition of approval. Condition number 3.18, prior to the final land planning inspection, the applicant shall re-landscape the Eagle Canyon Drive right-of-way and repaint or replace the existing rolling gate, subject to planning approval. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission find that the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to section number 15301, class number 1, existing facilities, and approve conditional use permit number 250004, subject to attached conditions of approval and based on the findings contained in the staff report. That
Thank
concludes
you.
my presentation. Thank you.
First, we move to questions from the commissioners. Let me start with Commissioner McPhail.
Okay. The new condition actually answered a couple of my questions, but so at the moment it's in two parcels, and I think one of the conditions involves merging the parcels together. Does that have to happen before anything else can happen, or that can happen sometime down the road?
So that can happen at the same time that they submit their construction plans, but it will need to be completed before it is final, or at least submitted.
Until those mergings happen, I'm guessing you can almost see two squares there. I'm guessing one square is one parcel and one is the other, kind of where the building ends, I guess. On the other side, the side going towards Eagle Canyon Drive, what exactly will be happening on that eastern side of the parcel that's new?
Yeah, so the lot is currently vacant. It is a dirt lot, which you'll see here.
Yep.
In the past, the previous business owner was using it as storage. However, we did place a condition where storage would not be permitted on that vacant lot. So currently, the owner doesn't have any plans for this portion of the property.
Right. I actually went by at lunchtime, and is the SR Appliance business done? Because the door was open, there were a ton of washing machines in there, and there was a truck.
I
It
believe
looked like it was in business in a way, but anyway, I was just wondering, are they actually out of there or going to be out of there?
they are still in business
Yeah,
at the moment. Yes,
but at some point they're going to be leaving, and this new business is going to take over.
correct.
Okay. I think the views that you showed are certainly a big improvement in what's there now, and I definitely take seriously the comments we got, and some of us were just at a little workshop regarding the Date Palm corridor and what our general plans might want to be for that, and I don't think we'll see what vision comes out of that, but I don't think we want the Date Palm corridor to become a hodgepodge of different businesses. But I think this improvement is a big improvement on what's there right now. So I'm happy with that.
Okay. Commissioner Bedard?
This is obviously a big improvement, and the same issue as the last, in that I'm always going to take a mental health awareness event, concept, and the more you can bring a nicer work environment or more cohesive, peaceful work environment, the more your employees benefit, right? Everything does better. So we also talked about shade structures and trees along Date Palm, and that was a big deal at the presentation. Was it Cal Poly San Luis Obispo that were working with us? We had that presentation on the weekend. Is there a way to put trees? That parkway looks awfully small. Is there a way to expand that little island? If it's 3 feet of space, that's enough to put a tree in the front. You had that slide up just a moment ago.
This one right here.
If I can interject before that on the landscaping, I did take a look at, in those small areas there where you have ingress and egress so close, and that'll be the same for the last site, I will look at it for line of sight conflicts. In this case, it's pretty darn close to a major street. Even though Cathedral Canyon is, and we could push the tree back a little bit, but in this one, I'm looking at those tree opportunities too, and I would discourage putting a tree there. And
So even a type of tree that would be tall and trunky, because the sign itself provides a lower barrier for visual, but it's set back from the sidewalk, you're going to be blocked by the sign that's there. If I'm correct, it's a vertical sign onto a horizontal area, so it's blocking. As you pull out, you're getting that visual.
if you did anything, Commissioner, just put the caveat subject to the city engineer's approval of the line of sight. And that's our city engineer, Armando Baldizoni. He's been looking at a lot of things where we have conflicts, and we're trying to correct those. And if you look in the engineering conditions of approval, that's a standard condition in there.
And there's no way to take that island and maybe step it back a foot or anything like that because of the parking lot clearance?
That would be up to planning, but I did measure the distances for the parking bays, and they're tight to
They
be
are.
able to back out there. So I don't think there's a whole lot of room there.
Okay. I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Malakoff.
I do concur with Commissioner Bedard, but I understand the limitations of the parking space and the dimensions for the parking and the backup and the turning movements, and having a safe turning movement would come first before the trees would. But what I'm more concerned about is I think that sometimes we forget about the adjacent residential areas, and that was my main concern on this project. And I appreciate Manuel addressing that. In the rear part of the lot, in providing a landscape plan. You know, in a perfect world, I would have liked see if I get the elevation right. I would have liked the eastern elevation to
Yes.
I think I got the eastern elevation to have a little bit of more articulation. But I think it's silly to provide articulation that's hidden by landscaping. So I didn't think that we should ask for both. So if you go back to the landscape plan, so if we put in the landscaping along Eagle Canyon so that there's a buffer between what the people that live on Eagle Canyon, what they're looking at when they're standing on their front porch or they're in their front yard, that at least they see nice trees and a approved block wall rather than just a bunch of dirt. So I appreciate that. I think that you should choose trees that are canopy trees that will grow wide to buffer that view so that they really can't see the building from Eagle Canyon if you're standing across the street. So it'd be the exact opposite of what I was talking about with the Italian cypress in the Tipuana-Tipu. You want to get the widest tree possible. And we'll leave that to staff to come up with an acceptable plan. And we won't require a number of trees.
Vice Chair.
A few meetings ago, we went through the first batch of specific plans that are in existence in the city. And if I recall, there is currently a specific plan that covers a big chunk of Date Palm. Is this property in that specific plan?
Yes, this property is in that specific plan.
Does this property meet the requirements of that specific plan?
Yes, so the specific plan over this property is more geared towards the uses in the area rather than design
Because I remember there
guidelines.
being some talk about design and character and things like that, because I was surprised that there was a plan like that in existence. I remember at that meeting.
Then that's most likely a different specific plan. I think the one you're referring to is the one more on the northern side of the city.
Okay,
So
yes,
believe
I
this
just
is-
wasn't sure how far south it went. Okay.
Yes.
I do appreciate that this is a great improvement to the property. I am wondering, I guess, since we're considering this, and since this we do allow automotive uses in community commercial, does this mean that we could end up with a lot more automotive uses in a lot of community commercial areas? Not that I'm against automotive in any way, but I know that there are a lot of people who are interested in seeing a greater diversity of business types in the city, and I'm just wondering, are we,
I don't see this as precedent setting in that sense. I think we have an older building, and even as we go back and look at previous businesses that were in here, there were auto service uses in this building in the past. So I think this is consistent with its historic utilization, and it's an appropriate reuse of the building as it's configured.
Okay, great, thank you.
I had a similar point to Vice Chair Mead that I jotted down before I saw the extra condition you added, which was, as I mentioned, some of us had been at the workshop about the Date Palm corridor, and I'd actually completely forgotten that maybe there was some kind of specific plan area there, because I'd written down, if we wanted some sort of cohesive vision for this corridor, should we have a specific plan? And maybe we do, and maybe we need to revisit that as we go on. If we're serious about doing something with the Date Palm corridor, having just gone through a workshop about it, and maybe some other streets, we have the pressure of we want businesses, we want the tax revenue, we want people to have businesses, but we also, I think, want to have some sort of clear vision, especially for these corridors. And as the Vice Chair said, I personally don't think automotive repair corridor is what people are wanting for Date Palm. And I don't know if there's any way to stop that happening in a piecemeal fashion as we start to get an applicant across the street and 3 blocks away. Is specific plans something that we should consider for the future if we want to have some cohesion here?
Thank you. Other comment?
2 things. One is I appreciate what Commissioner Mead and McPhail are saying, and I think that is definitely a worthy long-term goal. When we set up our plan for the Ramon corridor and for the Date Palm corridor, it's something that we need to address. Now, what the other cities have done is limited drive-throughs in these corridors and done other things to prevent a conglomeration of those uses. So when we get to that point after the zoning code update and we start dealing with the corridor plans, that's the time to start thinking about it. But you have to remember, it's something that's going to take a long time to impact. But at least we can get it started. We can get the ball rolling, but it's going to be small. And then maybe in 10 years, it'll be a lot larger. But I definitely concur with what you're saying, because we have a lot of fast food and a lot of auto repair. And we could get a better mix of uses. The other question I had for Mr. Firestein, just in general, in a year after our zoning code is updated, would these still have to come to Planning Commission, or would these be administrative actions since the buildings are already existing?
Well, it still comes down to the use and whether the use is a permitted or a conditional use. And I think that's what you're looking at here. You're looking at a conditional use. So it really comes down to how uses are established in the use tables and whether this remains a conditional use through the development code update.
So because they're auto repair, they would come back to us?
Under the current code, this is a conditional use, and what I'm suggesting for the commission is that through the development code update, this is something to look at. Look at the use tables to determine what the permitted uses, what the conditional uses are in this zoning district. And I think this is to the point about the corridor, how the corridor functions. You want to streamline those uses that you want to say yes to, make it easy for someone to do what you want. For those other uses that require some additional level of discretionary review, but you still might want to find a way to say yes, consider those conditional uses. And I think this is a case where, case by case, you can take a look at what is proposed, make that determination whether it's appropriate in this location or not. That's what the conditional use permit process allows you to do. Is this land use appropriate in this zone district, in this location? Are the potential impacts on adjacent properties satisfactorily addressed? Have they done a reasonable enough job to demonstrate that the use is appropriate in this location through the conditional use permit?
Just in general, I think coffee should be used as a model in how staff process that, because it looks real nice. They rehabbed the building, they rehabbed the parking lot, rehabbed the landscaping, and didn't require it to come back to Planning Commission, and it still looks really good. And that's the meaning of streamlining. And I would hope that projects like this could be part of that streamlining. But I'm happy to review them and welcome both of these businesses to the city.
Okay. Most of my points have been covered already, but just clarify the use of the different suites. I think the presentation said Suite 2, for example, is undefined.
Yes, so one of the suites will be used as office space for the auto repair. The other one is currently vacant. There is an additional door, as you see here, so it could potentially be a separate business. However, at the time, there's nothing proposed for it.
So we may end up with two businesses sharing the parking.
So that would be looked into whenever they apply for business license, we would definitely look into to see if it meets the parking standards.
Okay.
Whatever the
But
proposal.
they don't have a proposal for another business at the moment.
No, they don't.
And how would, if there was an application for another business in this location, would that come back to us too, or?
That would depend if it's a permitted use or a conditional use. If it's a conditional use, it would come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the back lot, that's going to be left at dirt? It's not going to be paved or anything?
Correct. The plan is for it to remain as is.
Okay. And it appears to be completely fenced in, so separate from the auto body shop. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The only access then is from Eagle?
For that vacant lot, yes.
Okay. All right. That's all the questions I have. Anything further from the Commission? No.
Just as a quick suggestion, if you can go back to the first slide. There's a place where you can see an existing palm tree. Sorry, go back to the first one with the, one more, sorry, right there. On that bottom left-hand corner where the word zone is, that looks like an existing palm tree. In that planter, if you can fit a palm tree, you can fit a tree. So in that space between that existing palm tree and the sidewalk, there's an opportunity right there. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. All right. I'll now open the public hearing.
I will ask if the applicant is present and would like to speak.
The applicant is not present.
Okay, we'll try this again. I did receive a comment. Are you the applicant, sir? Okay. Yes, come, please speak into the lectern.
Good night. It's Eduardo Jara, JP Custom Contractors. So that's our project. The process for the two lots to be merged is being it is on process. All the documentation, it's been submitted, as my secretary told me. Definitely, there is no problem to install some kind of green stuff on this back area.
So we can hear you.
Excuse me. So on the front, that's so hard to install another palm tree because the palm tree that is there, it's destroying the planter. Yeah. So it will be the same situation in the future. We'll see what kind of tree we can do, definitely. Yeah. But that was the only thing that I want to make.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair Lee, before I open it up to other members, I do have the comment that was received for the record. It was provided to the members of the commission and made available at the entrance for public inspection. Shauna McGloin expressed the need for improvements in the area of the proposed project before additional development. And I do have one member that would like to speak, Matthew Schaefer. Will you please come up to the lectern?
Hello. I retired a couple years ago, and I live on the corner of Date Palm and 35th Avenue in Caliente Sands. It is quite a noisy location. Unfortunately, I had to move. That was the only place that, was available at the time when I moved in. My concern is noise. With a repair shop like this, are we going to hear a lot of air wrenches, zip, 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 because I am retired, and I live in a 55-plus community, which is the sister park to Date Palm, directly across the street from the proposed site. So that's my only concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I see none, Chair.
Thank you, in which case I close the public hearing and hand it back to the Commission for a motion and discussion. We can have a motion to open discussion. Or not.
I will, do you want to
You
go?
go first.
I move that we find the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to Section 15301, and approve conditional use permit 250004, subject to conditions of approval. And I believe there was an additional, yes? And we add condition 3.18.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay, comments from
Eight.
Yours.
The Eagle
the
Gate improvements.
yeah,
Landscaping.
landscaping on the Eagle side.
Okay, I thought that was already included. Okay.
Okay, so comments or discussion? Commissioner Bedard?
No.
Oh, okay. Commissioner McPhail?
Nope.
Vice Chair?
I think the public comment is worth asking staff about. Obviously, they're going to be subject to the noise code that we have in the city, but is there anything that's being done to baffle any noise or anything like that that's typically included with auto body? Or
No,
repair?
not in this situation, no. I mean, the
You
auto
know what
repair,
the hours of the business are going to be?
I do not, unfortunately.
Okay. Any other comments? No? In which case, we can move to a vote.
Okay, I have a motion by Vice Chair Mead and a second by Commissioner McPhail. Please vote.
I'm trying.
Do you see the option, Commissioner Malakoff? You might want to make sure your screen is not expanded.
That's what I had to do. Can't see the
Or if you'd like, Commissioner Malakoff, you can verbalize your vote for me.
Vote aye.
The technology defeated us again.
Okay, and motion carries, all ayes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 4 on the agenda, non-public hearing items. We're bringing forward the original item 4B as our first presentation. May we have a staff presentation, please?
Code compliance. This will be a good time to ask about the noise.
There it is. Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, my name is Justin Gardner. I am the Code Compliance Manager for the City of Cathedral City. And I was asked today to come do basically a procedural overview of who Code Compliance is, what we do, how we operate, and what gives us that authority within the City of Cathedral City. So the goals and intent, Code Compliance is responsible for the enforcement of the municipal code first and foremost, and ordinances that protect public health, safety, and ultimately the quality of life. To do this, we seek voluntary compliance first and foremost. That is always our goal, whether that be a property owner at a home or a business. We always try to seek voluntary compliance. It's cheaper, it's easier, it's quicker, it's friendlier for everyone. We do initiate communication by informing and educating in most cases as first step. Yes, there are those egregious violations that do require us to jump a couple steps up in the ladder because we do have that discretion to alter our course of action based on severity of the issue. And then we can resort to administrative action only when necessary to achieve compliance. There are very many tools in our toolbox to achieve that voluntary compliance. So the division of the code compliance division itself is empowered to act through Title 13, titled Code Enforcement under the Municipal Code, Cathedral City Municipal Code 13.40 Enforcement Authority. That's what grants us our ability to do our job in the city. So our current organizational structure, our division is comprised of the following staff: myself, the department manager. I am assisted by 2 administrative personnel and administrative assistant, as well as an administrative analyst. They conduct the lion's share of clerical work, document distribution, and then data dumps and data pulls from our report writing systems, our AI camera systems, as well as other pertinent information through across the state and our other allied code enforcement agencies up and down the state. So we'll pull information from them as well. And then at any given time, we roughly have about 4 to 6 code officers, depending on vacancies. We're currently going into interviews later next week to fulfill a vacancy that we currently have for Code Officer 1 position. So here's kind of a quick snapshot of the stages or the departmental process of once we get a violation and how we move it forward. Violations are reported to us through either citizens, through our mobile app, through our web-based app, through phone calls, through wave downs, or proactively opened by our code compliance staff. The initial complaint is investigated. Those initial complaints, we refer to them as requests, not complaints. So we'll get a request for action. We'll go out and verify whether or not the request is actionable, if it's going to be a real code case, or if it's going to be closed as a non-code issue. So once we verify that, in fact, yes, this is a code compliance issue, we'll then process that over into the next stage, and that's typically where we start with a knock and talk. We knock on the door, we make contact with that property owner or tenant, and we begin dialogue and discussion. And that's where that education piece comes in, where we begin to explain to them what the municipal code is, their responsibilities, and then offer them suggestions on how to correct the discovered violation. And then continued failure, if they don't come into compliance within the time frame set forth, if they don't ask for any type of extension, we elevate our enforcement actions. And this is typically with a administrative citation. Procedurally, we'll do 3, 1 week apart from each other. And then at that third violation, if they're still unwilling to comply, we elevate a step further with final notice and order, and then we'll eventually put something called Notice of Pendency of Administrating Proceeding. It clouds their title. It's a big red stop sign for if they try to sell, refinance, or obtain any type of other permit, it'll come up on there. And then once that happens, then we have to make a decision on whether we're going to package it up further to bring to our legal team to seek legal action, or if we're going to close it as non-complied because essentially it's been worked to the point of exhaustion. So public requests, as I mentioned, the wave downs, majority of our cases do come in through our My Cathedral City app. We use that quite extensively. Even when we do in-house requests, our code staff or other city staff submit them to us through that My Cathedral City app. The second most common way is phone call into my administrative assistant. And then we also do often get flag downs or wave downs while we're out conducting business. And that also gives us a good opportunity to engage with the community and talk to them in the field in real time. So like I mentioned, the verification process, if we go out there and it's unfounded, we close it. If it is a true and legitimate code compliance case that can be remedied under the municipal code, we can open that request and graduate it into a full-blown code compliance case. Requests stay open if a code compliance case is open, and we've made updates in the recent past that now a lot of the communication is automated from our code staff back to the reporting party. So if substantive actions are taken, those particular actions will trigger an email to the reporting party to kind of keep them abreast of the flow of how things are happening. Unfortunately, nothing in code happens quickly unless it is voluntary compliance. As much as I would love to drag a violator out and say, clean it here now, we can't do that. We're governed by due process, we're governed by state law, we're governed by civil rights laws, and so we have to give time for notification. We have to notify properly, and then we have to give time for them to ask for extensions or even appeal. And once they appeal, that kind of puts the brakes on our case until the conclusion of that appeal. So sometimes it may look on the outside that code's not doing much or they're not around, but quite the contrary, on the back end, we've probably invested hours upon hours on paperwork to try to get that case moved forward. So notice and orders, if the property owner in violation cannot be reached or is unwilling to comply, we will issue them a notice of public nuisance in order to abate. Typically, this comes after education attempts and after those attempts to gain voluntary compliance. This starts the clock. This puts them on notice. We are supposed to give a minimum of 10 days to correct a problem. Depending on what the problem is, there are certain circumstances where that 10 days can be shortened to an immediacy, or most times we actually allow more than 10 days because it's reasonable and we like to give our community the chance to voluntarily comply. And we understand that a lot of these issues are going to take a lot longer than 10 days. But the 10 days, we usually put their feet to the fire, if you will, to at least get in contact with us, at least communicate with us, let us know where you're at, how things are going, and enter into some type of mutually agreed upon timeline for completion and compliance. So re-inspections, typically after 10 days plus mailing time, the assigned code officer will go back out to do a re-inspection of the property and to take photographic evidence from the road right-of-way, unless a consent to inspect form is filled out where the property owner or tenant allows access to the property. If those things don't happen, one thing that does delay our inspections often is just defiance of a property owner to allow us to inspect. And in those cases, we have to elevate it up through legal and obtain what's called an inspection warrant. They're timely, they're expensive, so we also have to weigh that out based on other needs of the department. Is going through that legal process and the time to do that and obtain these warrants, is it going to be worth the in-state? So those are all things considered with all of the cases that are coming in. But typically we'll go out and we'll take date, time stamped photographs and we will upload those into the case. If they came into compliance, awesome, no harm, no foul, case closed as complied, and we move on to the next one. If compliance was not met, that's when we start that elevation process. But all things are documented. We do offer the ability to fill out an extension, so if you get a hold of us in a proper amount of time after being issued any type of paperwork, and you have some type of exigent circumstances, a financial hardship, or anything else that you would like us to consider, you could fill out an extension request form. It gets filtered through your code officer up to my desk. For final review, we take things all considered, and then we will either approve or deny those extension requests. 9 times out of 10, all extension requests get approved. It's those ones that ask for a lot of time that they don't necessarily get disapproved, but there'll be a little pushback and we'll say, hey, let's piece this out. How about we give you 30 days instead of 120 days? And in that 30 days, can you at least meet this milestone? And we'll move that forward. So again, this could take time, and we do get a lot of pushback sometimes from reporting parties that are like, well, we saw a little bit of progress, but it's not done. Why is it taking so long? Well, everyone's circumstances are unique. So as long as forward progression toward compliance is happening, we're usually pretty happy. So this is one of the final stages. Our breakdown for fees, pretty much from almost all code cases, sans STVR and cannabis, are limited to $100, $200, and then $500. Plus a $22 processing fee through the Citation Processing Center. Typically, that first citation is going to be that $100 citation plus the $22 processing, and we'll usually give a week after that first citation before we go out again. And during that week time frame, we're attempting contact, we're attempting to let that violator know, hey, look, these are going to keep coming. Where are we at with things? We don't want to write you citations because ultimately those citations take away from money they could be spending to correct the issue. So these really are last ditch for us. We write that second citation a week later. If there's still no change, that third citation for $500, and then we have the ability at that point to either continue to cite at the rate of $500 per day per violation, or package it up and get it ready to send to legal for different types of enforcement. From here, we do have the ability to close non-compliant. So we have cleaned up our prior caseload with some of these types of closed non-compliant, meaning they're not necessarily off the hook, but we left them with that clouded title, and we worked the case to the point of exhaustion, where it's now no longer worth necessarily staff time. The impact on public health and safety versus staff time versus the outcome doesn't quite match. So we will at times close non-compliant. A good example of this type is they had 52% concrete in the front yard. Everything else presented well, it was good. Are we gonna spend tens of thousands of dollars plus a contractor and a warrant to go out and jackhammer 3 feet of concrete? Probably not. Cloud the title, walk away from it, but letting them know you're not completely free and clear, this could come back up at any time for enforcement, or it may get in the way if you try to refinance your home or pull a permit or sell. And then if there is an immediate threat to public health and safety, my team will package it up, bring that to me, brief me on what the issue is of the case, and then we'll move that forward to our legal team for legal action. Once we get it to our legal team, whether that be pursuant of criminal charges, temporary restraining orders, you name it, lots of tools in the toolbox here. It's out of our timeline. It's out of our hands. We're now at the mercy of Riverside County court system, and that delays a lot of stuff for quite a while. We never get anything expeditiously from the courts. So this is just kind of going back to compliance, and when a case is closed, information will go back out to the reporting parties to let them know that we solved an issue. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions if you wanted anything further.
Thank you. Questions from the commission?
I have a question for you. So I think there's like 2 different processes depending on what the violation is. So let's say you have like a spa hotel that's not keeping to health standards. The health department has been out there and doing whatever it is they do. And the city always has the option of revoking the conditional use permit or revoking the approval. But those are really 2 separate things. So the health department operates separately from you.
Correct.
And they can go forward with whatever health violations they have for their spa. But we can decide based on the findings that the health department gives us and other things, like violation of their conditions of approval, and revoke the conditional use permit.
Correct.
And then that would put an end to the case if the conditional use permit was revoked, because then there'd be no project anymore.
Correct.
So in a major case like that, the city has the option. It's a big deal to do that, but they could always do that.
They can. In my tenure being here, I've been a part of 1 CUP revocation.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Just a little question / comment. As you went on in the presentation, it was a really good presentation. When I first heard about 10 days, I thought that doesn't sound like much time to make a new fence or make a trash enclosure, but it's really just an opening shot. I was just wondering, just roughly in a month or a year, how many complaints do you get? And then of them, how many of them ultimately come into compliance?
So we just did a really great update January to the council, our year end. I didn't commit those numbers to memory. I want to say on average, though, we're getting about 120 to 150 complaints per month. Out of those, how many are found to be true and correct? Majority. It's not often that we find one unfounded. But we've seen a steady shift of a downward trend of open cases over the last 2.5 to 3 years. Prior to my arrival here, there weren't as many policies and procedures or go-bys or this is how I want it done. So I brought over some experience and training that I gained through, at the County of Riverside as the senior administration officer, and some other life experience. I brought that here, trained the code officers up. We've made a commitment to their education, both professionally and personally. I think every one of my officers, if they're not already enrolled, they plan on enrolling very soon into higher education. Three of them are seeking their associate's degree in code enforcement. And then we also prioritized professional training through the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers. And every officer we have on staff that's eligible to be certified is certified through the state. So I think with all of those things combined, it's made it easier for them to move cases through to a point of completion. So,
do you have a sense of how many go off to the court system in Riverside County?
not many, because we have to balance our budget. So we usually reserve the worst of the worst for that, because all court actions, anything with an attorney is going to cost a lot of money.
Yes.
So, and we've prioritized education. We've prioritized humanizing the badge and community outreach, and I think that's made a huge impact on voluntary compliance, because we're changing the narrative of we're not code enforcement, we're code compliance, and that's what we really want to hone in on, is that we're here to help you and educate you and teach you the standards of the community. Most people think or have this idea that unless I live in an HOA, I can do what I want. And that's kind of common throughout. And then a lot of times people have no idea that the community they bought their home in comes with a set of rules and rules that they have to abide by. So a lot of it does just start with simple knock and talk and education of what the rules are and how to follow them.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
First of all, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. And I also want to commend your department on those videos you were doing that the city did on Facebook. Those were great, and also I'm sure helped with the humanizing and the
more to come.
You were talking about. Great, those were awesome. A few questions. So from the time you get a complaint or someone calls something in or submits it through the app, how long does it typically take before one of your officers is able to go verify?
So that's something that we've made huge improvements on over the last couple years, especially over the last, I would say, 6 months. We have KPIs in place that we'd like to get out within 5 days of receiving a request. Because one thing I do want to stress to the commission is that we are not first responders. We are not emergency workers. We don't get paid like that. We don't get retired like that. We don't even have presumptive status, even though we're going into these areas with rats and vermin and feces and some of the most deplorable conditions. But everything in code, it can wait till tomorrow, or it can wait till Monday, right? But with that, we've kind of just internally have done some new things, and I've created my own dispatch center, if you will. So all of my code staff carry iPads equipped with 5G. I now have a dedicated monitor in my office with the Find My iPad app up and the chat, the iPad chat activated, so I have 2 screens, so we can monitor cases and requests as they come in real time, and then every day they cycle through and assign themselves as the duty officer. So there's one duty officer who's responsible for radio calls from police and fire, and then now we've baked in that they are also responsible to go out as soon as reasonably possible to every request. So we're starting to see same day, sometimes even within hours, response time to at least verify if it's a code case. It may not get worked right then, but at least they're going to go out and say, yep, this is a good code case, make case notes, and then it will get assigned to a code officer.
Great. What happened? Okay, so then the next question was, this is based on having been an HOA president in the past.
My condolences.
People, yes, people will violate the code often, but it's a temporary violation, right? So it's every day someone parks their car on their front lawn. When they get home from work, it's there overnight, but in the morning they move it. So they are self-correcting it. It's a more behavioral thing than it is a violation that persists that then you go out and I guess I'm wondering, how do we handle those kind of things that are they're less persistent?
So this is every day in code. This is every day. It's kind of the same, your car's making noise until you get it to the mechanic, right? We respond to those types of call-outs daily, and we do have habitual violators. Just because they happen to move right then doesn't necessarily mean it corrects the problem. So the more data that we can get and share with that violator and say, look, we've driven by. So now, right now, currently, if you haven't been made aware, we have a pilot program currently happening with a company called City Detect. They're the first to market this, but it's AI-assisted cameras. We have them equipped on 2 of our code vehicles. And on the first and third weekend of the month, I have a code officer drive the entirety of the city. Every single navigatable street that they can drive on, they drive it. We do a mass data dump by Monday morning. It looks for things like parking on the grass. It looks for things like visible trash containers, shopping carts, all of these things. And we can pull that and then send letters to those people with a date time stamped photo with their APN and address and say, this is your car, it's on your driveway. If we catch it again, now you are subject to citation. And with those types, parking on the grass, for instance, that's an immediate citation. That's not the 10 days of correction or anything like that. We could jump to an immediate citation because it's a parking violation, not necessarily a code violation. Our municipal code mirrors the California Vehicle Code. And so we have administrative citations, but they're parking administrative citations that we'll use for those types of issues.
Okay, so you can still send someone a letter even if it's something
can.
that's not 100% persistent? Okay.
We
And
can.
then I'm just curious, what happens, you mentioned, you send out the $100 citation and then it increases. What happens if people just don't pay? They just blow it off?
That happens. It happens quite a bit, and that's why we pay for a third-party company called the Citation Processing Center or Data Ticket, and that's part of the contract with them, is that they are our debt collectors. And so they will work with the Franchise Tax Board, and we've had instances where we've had someone refused to pay. They stacked up a bunch of late fees and fines on top of it. Then they got their tax return back, and Franchise Tax Board went ahead and reached out and grabbed it. And then they called us, hey, what the heck? Why did my tax return get nabbed? Well, you owed us X amount of thousands of dollars, and we appreciate your.
Interesting, okay, that's good to
Appreciate
know.
you taking care of this.
Thank you very much, that was it for me.
Sure.
What happens, the interaction between you and Riverside County Animal Control? Like if a neighborhood has an out-of-control rooster, is that handled by code enforcement, or do you refer that to the animal control campus?
We handle anything that's called out in the municipal code. So in our municipal code, we do have a section based on animals and prohibited animals in neighborhoods, and that type of fowl is prohibited. So it could be a code compliance issue, but it doesn't hurt to also work concurrently with animal control. We've found that we have a very good working relationship with the county, whether that be through their environmental health department or animal control or other agencies. So with those, we could potentially work concurrent cases, but rooster in this case would likely fall back on to my division.
Yeah, I don't think roosters tend to want to follow the rules.
Okay.
They have a mind of their own.
So some of the points that I was going to raise have been raised already by the vice chair, as usual. But go back to the cameras for a minute. So you're dispatching, you said you've got 2 cars now that.
We have 2 code compliance trucks that are equipped with 2 cameras each, so they look outbound on either side, and they collect data while they're driving.
And I think we have 150 miles of navigable road in the
Give or take.
city.
It takes about a full weekend to drive the whole city.
That's what I was wondering, yeah. And if I remember from their presentation, then you get a set of photos back as well.
Correct.
So you can link those to the citations that you
We
sent.
can.
And how well is it working in somewhere like Panorama, which is famous for 5 cars per house parked on the street. So can you see the landscaping or?
We can. They're situated on the top of Ford F-150s, so it's got a pretty decent vantage
Oh, okay.
point.
All right.
They're not like the towers coming off of a Google vehicle that can see way down, but we have a pretty decent vantage point. But the benefit to having that weekend officer, so they're on the vehicles at all times.
Right.
So as those code officers just drive their normal daily routines, it's collecting data. But then for that citywide sweep, we do that systematically twice a month. So eventually we're gonna drive by and get a clear view at some point. We do experience at times, maybe a box truck goes by or another larger vehicle goes by, and that day and time, the image will be skewed, but it's still saved, so we know that it was skewed and it will say low-quality image. And then we have essentially a timeline with little blips on it at the bottom of the review page that says exactly the date and time every time it was driven by and the photo was collected.
Okay. And do you send that information out with the citation, this was spotted on a car or?
We won't send the citation. So what we'll first do is the City Detect, my administrative assistant will review it for validity. Then we have a 4-page educational packet that will go out. That first page is an introductory letter as to the pilot program and that they possibly were violating the municipal code. And then that second page has that picture with the date timestamp on it, their address and everything, and then she'll even go a step above and beyond and use a highlighter and kind of draw arrows to like, this is exactly what we're talking about. And then we have it in the municipal code language, the black and white, and then we break it down in layman's terms underneath to explain exactly what it is that we want you to correct. And then we send out a pride in appearance or pride in ownership flyer, both in English and Spanish.
So you mentioned, and I took that point, that you're not first responders. I mean, I've heard that from you before. But what I'm wondering is, how are you dealing with an instance that arrives out of hours that actually is only going to be temporary, but is a problem, like a loud noise, for example? The police will respond to those if it's sort of in the evening, I guess, but.
Right. So for noise complaints, typically, especially after hours, we'll always default to the police department.
Okay.
Because they're equipped with that training, that equipment, and to be able to handle that kind of stuff. I know as a code officer for other jurisdictions that I've been dispatched at times to parties as an unarmed solo person, and usually where there's parties, there's alcohol, and where there's alcohol, there's attitudes, and it's not usually a safe thing for a code officer. So in this case, we'd default to them, and then we would just work concurrently with the police department, ask them for whatever details, case number that they have, or, you know, if we start to notice, hey, this is a pattern of this happening versus a one-off, because, I mean, there's going to be parties here and there one-off, but if it's a pattern and the police have been dispatched a lot, we can use those dispatch records and the officer notes to then use municipal code to back us for what our actions are.
Right.
And then there are cases for other things that may be outside of our normal working hours, and that's when I adjust my staff's time to go out and look at certain things. So like light trespass would be one that sometimes we'll adjust staff hours to go look at, but those are typically one-offs.
Does that apply to reports of unpermitted STVRs? Because that's often a case of somebody sees a lot of cars outside of a property that shouldn't have any cars.
Yeah. So STVRs, after hours, we would not be going out to. We would collect that data, any kind of information that the reporting party has, and then we would do our back-end research to see if we can find that they had any illegal postings, or, you know, do they have a 30-day business license, or, you know, if they're doing 30-plus day rentals, and we do the investigatory stuff during normal business hours on that one.
And is it still the case that basically you can only do cost recovery, or are the charges for these offenses, are they above cost recovery?
We can find them. We can write citations that would be outside of cost recovery.
Okay, all right.
Cost recovery would come at a point if we start looking towards if we had done an abatement, where if we corrected the problem, then that's when we're tracking staff time, attorney time, all of that, because we want to get reimbursed for that.
Right. So in principle, we can find a lot more, like we could go to from 100 to 1,000.
Well, 500, but we can cite, the first site, so we're confined by law on this, so the first site can't exceed $100 plus the $22 processing fee. Then let's say I go back the very next day. There's nothing that says we have to give that 7-day grace period. We do that to work with the citizens. But let's say we go back the very next day and I can cite them now for 200 plus the 22 per violation. So if they have 4 violations on the property, that's 2, 4, 6, $800 plus 22, 22, 22, 22 assessed toward them. And then on that third day and every day thereafter, up until a certain point, we can write $500 per violation.
Okay.
And if I can interject there for just a moment, those are the base fines that are identified in the code. The municipal code does allow the city council to adopt greater fines
Oh, it
by
does.
resolution, and they have for short-term vacation rentals, for cannabis odors, and plastic beverage straws.
Oh, thank you. I forgot the straws. Yes, straws.
Yes.
Plastic
Well,
beverage what?
plastic beverage straws. They're illegal. Cathedral City, you didn't know that. Last point from me then, and that's really about the code in general. I see on social media, I get questions from people like, can I have a rooster, or can somebody have a rooster? And even though I know approximately where I'm going to look in the municipal code, I often find it difficult to find that information. I suspect there's a sort of list of 10 or 20 questions that come up all the time. And I'm wondering if they can be linked in My Cathedral City in the app, or that they can be put into an FAQ in your department website or something, so that people, I can just say, go look at the FAQ.
Right. So on the My Cathedral City app, we do have that already embedded in
okay.
it. And then on our website portion, I believe we have a lot of stuff, but it kind of gets over exhausting of all the, to pan through all of that. But, just like the advances we have with the City Detect and that AI camera system, there are new technologies and options that are coming out there. One that we explored not too long ago at another conference is an AI bot that would interact with you as if you were talking to me, and you could just, in layman's terms, ask it those questions. Hey, I want a shed. What should I think about? And it'll find exactly where, and you have a very natural conversation with it to guide you through that in any native tongue that you decide. So if you speak Tagalog or Spanish or English or French, it'll in real time translate and answer all those questions. Until we invest in that, though, I encourage every community member just to reach out to us. Because if we don't have the answers, we go and tap on planning's door, or we tap on the building official's door and say, hey, we have questions. We don't have the answers to this. We will find you that answer.
Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, you do?
Yes, well, based on what you just said, you could very easily just take the municipal code as a PDF and upload it and make a custom GPT that would be free for you guys to create, and you could just post a link to it and it would interact with people.
I'd have to get the blessing of IT. I'm right there with you, but there's always more layers in government.
Okay, because I know I have asked questions just in Google, and it will go through the municipal code and give you pretty accurate information. The question that Chair Lee brought up about whether it's cost recovery or fines, I know that I've heard, not a lot, but there are people who are concerned about, is code enforcement a money-making scheme for the city? Do you have a general sense of how much the department costs to run versus how much money the department brings in? Is it?
Oh, it's completely upside down.
So you spend more running the department than in terms of
Absolutely.
the money you bring in? Okay,
Absolutely.
I figured that was the case, but I just thought it was useful information to.
It's because you have to factor in
Confirm.
there also all of the hundreds of thousands that we are in arrears of unpaid citations also.
Okay,
So you factor all that in, we are completely upside down.
okay. Thank you so much for confirming what I thought was true.
I just want to make sure that we are, not promoting just one AI. So ChatGPT does that too. I ask it all the time, what does Cathedral City Code say about this? So, yeah, I thought you said Google.
She said both.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you very much.
Very welcome.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Hey, all the data that is being brought in, that's very specific and personal to people's homes, names, addresses, property. Is that being sold or packaged anyway by the city or the company operating this system for you?
So the City Detect does not pull in anything private like that. It's all public record. So no, nothing private or nothing that we can't already access through public record.
So all the data that shows, like Roomba is now letting the service that owned, the new company that owns Roomba, they're literally mapping people's houses and getting data of when people are home, how long they're home, what generally energy use that they're compiling with that experience. So this data isn't going in that direction.
Nope. So this is, City Detect is not even a large language model AI. It is the most rudimentary of AI. It's mechanical AI. So there are software engineers that are teaching this robot, this is mouse. See mouse? Go find mouse. It doesn't know anything else. It's not making any other kind of assumptions or outreach like OpenAI or ChatGPT would be doing. So it's not data collecting in that sense at all. All that it's doing is looking at the map that we provide it, saying this is where I took the picture, this is the angle I took the picture, this is what I see in the picture, and either it fits or does not fit mouse.
And are there any protections in the contract that would protect that from being sold?
Yes, so all of the data is owned by them and kept by them within their parameters that council.
But the contract says that it's being kept by them, but it cannot be.
They use it solely for what they're using it for the program itself.
Great, thank you.
I think we really are done this time, Justin. Thank you very much.
That's okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to item 4. It was 4A, presentation on building a defensible record in public hearing. Can we have the presentation?
Yes. And Chair, before we have that presentation, just for the record, we have no attendees in the audience, so we have no public comments on any of the remaining items.
And I was
I was just saying that I don't know how long this particular presentation is going to take, but we're approaching 8 o'clock, and I was just wondering if we could take a 5-minute stand up and stretch and bathroom break. The presenter seems to agree.
So, we'll recess for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Almost. Oh, you're very welcome to it.
City Clerk, are we ready?
We're ready when you are, Chair.
Thank you. Call the meeting back to order and proceeding with item 4A, presentation on building a defensible record in a public hearing, a staff presentation.
Thank you. Hi, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Gutierrez. I have been with the City Attorney's Office and working with Cathedral City for quite a few years now. And so just for everyone at home that's watching, we're going to be talking about a defensible record in a public hearing and how the city actually builds that. It's definitely not as fun as, code enforcement. This is the opposite side of code enforcement. But really, what we're going to talk about are just the strategies and the best practices that the city currently practices, and really the reasons behind them. So the whole purpose of all these projects that come before you, yes, it is to consider the actual use that is going to be used on that specific property, like we talked about earlier today, like the automotive uses. But behind all of that is this entire documentation record that is being built internally and then also presented to the commission. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So I think it's really important to just kind of identify what a public hearing is. I think oftentimes the community gets a little confused because there is a difference between a formal public hearing that is noticed and then a public hearing that maybe somebody wants to have them consider a certain item but wasn't legally required to be notified to a certain radius of people regarding that specific property. I think you see this a little more often in city council meetings where maybe it's like a ordinance amendment that has something to do with an item outside of our zoning code that doesn't necessarily require a notice public hearing. And then the government code specifically for planning usually is where our arena lands for planning commission is. We put out these notices letting the public know, this specific item is going to be heard, and the time and place and a little bit of a description of what is going to be presented to the commission. So the importance of building a record, we're going to kind of just go through the practicalities of everything, but mostly it's just ensuring legal compliance. I think oftentimes, we kind of go through the motions, commissioners and everybody has access to agendas, staff reports, and different items that are just available online. But I don't know that it's really clicking that the whole reason that that's there is because we have a legal duty to create an administrative record for that specific item. So we'll kind of go through just a few different aspects here. As I mentioned, the first thing, really, a defensible record, it's just ensuring legal compliance. We do have statutes that kind of walk through what an administrative record would be and making sure that that is, in alignment with all of our procedures internally. But really, the whole goal of an administrative record is to be available in case of litigation. Literally every step that we take internally, every step staff takes internally is with the idea in mind that a judge might have to review it, because we might have to get to a point where we face a legal challenge, and that is exactly where the evidentiary process starts. I'm skipping ahead of myself here, but yes, so the whole purpose is to just protect against a legal challenge. And when we're talking about legal challenges and what is required, it really just depends on the type of challenge. So you have traditional mandamuses, administrative ones, you could have CEQA challenges. All of that is going to require different documentation when a judge picks up the case and wants to know whether things were conducted correctly. It also is super helpful to just have documentation for staff to reference, right? We might have a scenario like our code enforcement team was talking about earlier, where maybe you did issue a CUP in the past, and maybe we did have a condition of approval that was specific to that specific project for a specific reason, but all of that when we're trying to revoke a CUP, it is a hearing, it is an administrative hearing that we have to go back to our record and see what the purpose of that condition was, whether it was conducted correctly. If it wasn't, did we go back, did code mark several months of noncompliance with that specific condition of approval? So all of that to say is that the documentation, it even helps us internally, even regardless of having to present anything in a court. It also enhances credibility and trust. Really, you want the community to be able to go online and to see, that have access to staff reports, different, traffic items, really get an idea of what internally staff is doing and what staff is analyzing, how that meets our code, and really just encouraging participation. Like you saw earlier today, there are some people that have concerns about certain uses that should be able to look at in a record and say, hey, actually maybe staff did conduct enough analysis for them to feel like they do want to participate or they don't want to participate. But it really just enhances just credibility throughout. And when we're talking about legal requirements, this is just basically like an overview of what I mean is, knowing our local public hearing laws. You guys have recently, encouraged a wider breadth of public hearing notices, right? That doesn't apply to every city, but here, it was important enough for Cathedral City to expand that. So it is something that we have to keep in mind, and that is part of the public record, the administrative record. Again, transparency, making sure all of the documents are accurately, filed, providing accessibility. And then there's this other piece that we do have to maintain confidentiality when it's required. So we'll kind of walk through that in just a minute as well. But implementing structured approaches to maintain a defensible record, that's what we do every day here. The staff conducts that. We, legal team gets pulled in whenever necessary. But just to kind of go through some of this, whenever you make a quasi-legislative decision, like the issuance of the CUP earlier today, no statute tells us exactly what needs to be included in your administrative record, right? So, even if a notice public hearing is required, sometimes an administrative record for one thing is going to look completely different than for another project. So again, no specific legal requirements on the record, but it is going to differ from project to project. Same thing with the contents of the record. Like I mentioned, most of them, we're all going to have staff reports, anything that's circulated publicly or made available for public review, and then any documents considered by Planning Commission that are not confidential. And there are also times where you may be presented by a public comment where there might be evidence outside of the administrative record that is presented to you here during a public hearing. But it's generally inadmissible, so we do have to take that into consideration. But as far as when we talk about an administrative record, we're really looking at documentation. And there are certain points where maybe not all documents that are pertinent to the litigation or to a challenge will be included. For example, say, there's a legal memo that we have provided planning staff regarding maybe an analysis of a certain provision in the municipal code to guide them in their decision of whether to support, a project or not. That's not going to be included, right? But internally, we know that that procedure was followed because of a certain advice that was given by legal. That's just one example. It's just a privileged memo that would not normally be included. And so even in what is included, it matters with whether it's a substantial evidence standard. So the administrative record always has to demonstrate an evidentiary basis for the decision. That's why you have findings, right? But those findings are reviewed by a court under the substantial evidence standard. And then we also look at the connection or the nexus to the purpose of maybe conditional uses, for example, like conditional approvals that are provided. What is the purpose of that, right? Like, what is the purpose of us adding a condition of approval to mitigate a certain action, right? So the question usually before the court, once we get that far, is whether the agency's decision is supported by substantial evidence in the light of the whole record. And really, when you say substantial evidence, it's evidence that is reasonable, credible, and of solid value, and it must be enough that a reasonable mind could accept it as adequate to support a conclusion. So that is very specific and very applicable, right? I think that that's always a very hard standard to meet sometimes, because one person might see something reasonable and another doesn't. But it's our job to make sure that the judge sees our view as the city and in terms of the analysis that we conducted. And then the scope of review really does include the entire administrative record that is presented. It's not isolated pieces. So if substantial evidence supports the city's findings, they're upheld even if the court might have come to a different conclusion, right? So one of the ways that you can have a legal challenge is if somebody basically says, yes, the city went through the proper procedures, we appealed to the city council, they applied their analysis of their code to my specific project, but it's the wrong outcome. They should not have determined that it was denied, or they should not have determined that I needed to meet the specific condition of approval in order to have my project approved. Even if they might have an argument, the fact is that if our evidence supports our conclusion and our precedent supports that that specific outcome was accurate and consistent throughout, the court will automatically go the city's way. So there are other practical considerations here. So really, we're trying to ensure that a record is always complete and organized. Everything matters, even if it is something that we can't include publicly, right? Everything within the record is relevant, has to be relevant, has to have exhibits, evidence, PowerPoints, maps. Everything that we have in the record is aside from drafts, notes, privileged materials. So you will have access to traffic reports and everything of that nature in the administrative record. And then also the important part is just to maintain accuracy and clarity. That's why you have different attachments. Literally, when you open up any kind of agenda online, there's a million different attachments and a million different links to look at, and that's for ease of reference for you and for the public. And really, staff always plans ahead during the administrative process. They always contact our office whenever they need a little bit of help in terms of preparation. But most of the time, staff just handles any kind of document site visits, photos, maps. They have guidelines for preserving and compiling the record. And all of that, they do it in anticipation if it was ever challenged in a legal context. So a proper administrative record really is critical to defending an agency decision, right? I have had staff reports, resolutions, ordinance amendments have been reviewed by judges, and they really go through and read the context of the staff report, what was provided, maybe information that should have been provided, that maybe was included in an attachment, but maybe not in the staff report, things of that nature. That's every aspect of the record does get analyzed. Like I mentioned, there are different decision types, so that's always going to dictate what is reviewed by the judge. There's always careful attention to the decision-making procedures and any kind of legal mandates that, we met what we needed to as far as a record that was provided. And really the whole goal here is to make a comprehensive record. And so including everything that we possibly can, down to photos, maps, all of that, anything that isn't privileged will be included and made publicly available. So like I mentioned, I feel like I am a little honing in on this part. It's just super important to just make sure that really the record safeguards against legal challenges. And so that's why you see such extensive documentation presented to the commission whenever we have an item before you for consideration. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions?
Dare I make a couple of comments? They're not really questions. I have more of a comment than a question, the worst thing to say. I just want to thanks for the presentation. I think it was really useful to us. And I think one of the things that you obviously brought up a lot was the issue of having, a defensible record, the materials that we have. And I just wanted to commend our staff. In the 18 months I've been on the commission, I think I've really noticed a really good improvement in the reports that we're getting, how they're organized, and the very clear statement of reasons, which are obviously important for this whole exercise. Or maybe I'm just getting used to the way we do things here, but I really do think the reports are really helpful to us. I wanted to thank you for that. And I guess a little comment I wanted to make was I think the reason for this request for the presentation probably came about because the chair and I went to a best practices conference in Eastvale late last year. And there were a couple of issues that came up from that, one of which I remember was their advice was that when we're having a public hearing, until we're done with the public hearing, we should not be saying anything along the lines, I think this is a really nice application. That looks like a nice place. We shouldn't be making any value comments before the public hearing is over because it would suggest bias or something, I guess. So that's really all I have to say.
Do you confirm or deny that?
I know. No, I do think that all of that matters. I think that part of the point of this is to really identify that it is super important to have things written. I think you've heard our office kind of say that multiple times, right? When you make a decision, it may not be because of a personal view or a personal bias. It is because what is being presented to you in this administrative record is consistent with the zoning code. It matches, what the goals are in terms of the general plan. The standards have been met, the findings can be met. So I think part of that is, the concern of sticking to what is written in your administrative record rather than maybe leaning towards a personal bias of finding some reason to just not like a project based off of aesthetics or personal beliefs.
Okay.
You have to be very careful, say, especially these days with the social media, because if somebody can accuse you of being biased, then you really would need to recuse yourself to prevent a lawsuit. And there was a case in LA County with I can't remember the name of the city now, but it was a planning commissioner, and then he became a councilman, and he said all sorts of awful things about the applicant, and they lost the case because he voted in a biased way. So you have to be careful what you say.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned, there was a slide where you mentioned that additional information outside the initial record that was presented is inadmissible. So my question would be, what if there is someone from the public who presents information that proves that one of the findings that's presented is factually inaccurate? We're not allowed to consider that?
No, absolutely. So in that case, you would ask staff to go back and to include it in the record to analyze that information that was provided to you. And that's part of this quasi-judicial action and process that you guys conduct with CUPs, with variances, with those types of issues, because if somebody did bring in something to contradict a finding that absolutely is relevant, it's just that how is staff or anybody supposed to weigh in knowing that substantial evidence standard without some sort of analysis?
Got it.
So maybe just not something we would recommend to consider, their word and as fact on the dais, but it is something to consider as far as staff, please look at this, please include it in the administrative record. We want to make sure that it was analyzed properly.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we have a couple of issues around that whole problem. So a gentleman might come in and tell us that we've misunderstood the conditions for air quality for this particular project. And he might cite a Google page that he's found or whatever. And I don't know whether you're saying, well, in that case, we have to go back and ask staff to go away and reconsider it, or we can make an assumption or at that point that this person is not changing the rest of the evidence that we have.
Correct. So if I could just make a small clarification. For Vice Chair Mead's question, I really assumed that it was something of fact. I don't know, something, maybe
I
a
can give you a real
photograph.
example that we had.
Sure.
So the situation with the people who wanted to put up the wall in front of their house, and one of the findings was that that house had been specifically built with 2 windows in the front and 2 bedrooms in the front, and we had someone from the public who came who said, in fact, it was not, that it was remodeled to be that way. And so because the finding actually stated the house was originally built like that, we did actually send it back, and they went and came up with something else. So that was the example I was thinking of.
Yeah, so that's when that substantial evidence standard should come into view, right? That was a reasonable assumption, right? You took that, and a reasonable person would agree that, hey, that would matter as to whether that finding can actually be made. Let's ask staff to confirm whether that is correct, because it was mentioned multiple times, right? So for that specific example, it's like, hey, there are probably documents, other aspects that we could look for to consider and to analyze, bring into the record. But if, something that we can't measure, right? If you as a commissioner think, hey, you know what, they are bringing a reasonable point, I understand what they're saying, it would change my decision, and I would say that if their facts or if their statement is correct, we couldn't make the finding, that's when we need to ask those questions. That's when it's like up to you as to whether to send it back to staff,
Okay.
whether,
So looking at that from scope of experience too, if any of us, for example, was a builder or whatever, and we had direct experience of an issue, should we be considering that or only what is in the packet that was presented to us?
well, I'm going to use Commissioner Malakoff as an example for a quick second.
Well, yeah.
He has planning experience, right?
Yeah.
So some of the questions that arise may not be considered by other members of the commission, but may be relevant to other members of the commission in their decision-making process,
So-
right? So
so-
it's absolutely okay.
Okay.
I just, for example, I have plenty of commissions that have architects, right? And so maybe they just wouldn't agree with how something is done, but that is very different than whether it was done legally, right? Does it meet the
Okay.
building code, all of that stuff.
And that's what we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
In terms of, we mostly spoke about documents, but you did mention in one slide video. So, I mean, this meeting right now, we're being recorded. So this could be considered part of the record.
Correct.
What about if any of us decide to talk to the applicants outside of this meeting? So if I go and visit a site and I meet the owner of the cannabis store or whatever, and he talks to me at that location, can I use that information in the meeting, or should I ignore that for purposes of making the decision?
No, so all of that would probably lean into conflicts, and so we need to disclose any kind of communications. Yes, it's ex parte communications that occurred prior outside of the public hearing. So you would need to disclose that if you do want to consider it, but we actually really discourage that practice.
How about, how about just going and saying, "Yay, I love the idea that you're doing this. Is that okay?"
No, well, yeah, that's not a discussion necessarily on your view of it, right? Or your analysis of the project.
I'm asking because I want to make sure that we know what our limits are
Sure.
when we're going out. We all drive past these places to see what they look like and so on. But if we end up interacting with people at the site, I want to understand that that might be a conflict of interest.
Sure, so it is going to come up. It happens all the time, even with council members. They might drive by a certain store to see how the construction is coming along because they're really excited this new coffee shop is like coming to town or something. But then say that coffee shop somehow gets appealed, it's going to be presented before them. That is part of the procedures that we encourage, is to disclose that ex parte communication. Oftentimes, it's just best practice to say, hey, we didn't go into details about anything. We really just talked about the business plan and what really the thought process was behind all of this and what the goal is for the business generally. But we didn't discuss, whether it met the standards of the zoning code and, the aesthetics of it, and why I personally feel like it should have been, I don't know, an auto shop instead of a coffee shop. It really varies as far as the communication. If I just go up to you and say, oh my gosh, hope everything is well, hope construction is going well, I don't consider that any kind of communication that would need to be disclosed that would make you bias or limit your participation in the public hearing process.
So Chairley, if I can just draw on that a little bit. I think your question is specific to communication, but I understand the commission does get out in the field. You do look at some of these project sites. If there are discoveries that you've made while you're out in the field, it's important that you bring that back into this room, that you ask the questions of staff in order to draw out the information that can then be put on the record. It's not sufficient to just rely on information that you may have learned or discovered prior to the meeting. So I think that's an important distinction too. We want to make sure that the commission is asking questions and helping build that record.
Yeah, I think my point was more about actual communication with the applicant and whether or not, if we're saying, well, I'm really excited about this project, I think it's going to look great, that would be seen on review as a bias expressed to the applicant.
It could. I think that it's a very nuanced position, and that goes on a case-by-case basis, right? But, to your point, it does matter the communication that is had. It does matter the fact that maybe on a personal level that you really appreciate that project and you appreciate the aesthetics and what it's going to do to that specific property. But somehow we need to be able to prove to a judge that you are able to separate that and consider what is actually being presented before you in terms of findings,
So we can basically avoid pitfalls if we understand what might be considered a problem. And that's why I bring it up is we can avoid these issues ourselves if we understand what is potentially a problem.
Absolutely. And like we said, we absolutely anticipate and expect everyone to kind of drive by different properties or maybe look at the surrounding area and see if there are any issues or if you have any concerns. But ideally, that would be brought to staff to be able to include it in the record before the commission, so that way we can make sure that we analyze any concerns you have beforehand.
Good, thank you, yes.
I have two things in response to your very good comments. One is, when you go out in the field and you do run into the applicant and everything, I try to say as little as possible to them as to what I'm thinking and what I know. And if I want to ask them a question, I think that's okay, but I'm not going to tell them what I think. And then I think then I'm duty bound at the hearing to say that I had ex parte communication with them. And I think then you're in the clear. But you have to be very careful not to say, oh, It's fine. You know, you just, you know, but if you want to ask them a question, how do you get from here to here? You can do that. But don't say, oh, I love your project, that kind of thing. And then the other thing I think you brought up that I just wanted to mention that I think is important is if you have a project, let's say somebody wants to do a drive-through and they're concerned about traffic, and they just bring up some issues not based on fact about traffic for the drive-through, and it, you know, it's just issues based on what they've observed, and they're not an expert, and it, you know, I think those are the kinds of things you have to use your common sense on. You know, is that a real issue or not that they're bringing up when we have an expert that prepared something that's right in front of us? Now, let's say that same person brought in another traffic consultant that disputed point A, point B, point C, point D, then we have something to talk about. And in that case, I think if you have an opposing expert witness on a study, whether it's traffic or air quality or whatever, then that needs to go back to staff for them to make the analysis. And they may even need to hire a third expert to look at what both of the two said. But if a second expert comes in that has a background, then I think we're obligated to listen to that. But if it's somebody that's just making observations, I don't think we have to take that into consideration, you know, for as a scientific view, at least in my opinion. But if somebody knows how to work the process, they're going to bring in an expert, and that's the way to get a disagreement on a project.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's really the biggest takeaway here is that the commission, I've said this over again, but you know, the public doesn't realize that you guys function as basically a little courtroom, right? A mini version of what a judge does every day, you do as a panel whenever we have a meeting. And so what you can and cannot consider is dictated by an administrative record, is dictated by, you know, statutory guidance, is dictated by case law, all kinds of different things where, you know, like we mentioned, if somebody comes in and just says, you know, I've noticed that, you know, there's an issue with the traffic, I can never park my car next to my house because, you know, there's all these cars everywhere and, you know, it's because of this specific business. If there's no correlation or no study to show that because that business was put there and all of a sudden there's traffic or any kind of nexus, that's hard. That's a hard thing for you as a courtroom basically to take as word, right? So the whole point of all of this is to really just outline the importance of the documentation, the importance of reviewing everything that's presented, and really the thought process behind the supporting of an approval for a project or denial.
Thank you. Anything further? No? Thank you very much. We're moving on to item 4C, the Development Code update. Do we have a presentation or report?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience this evening. In your packet, you do have a summary of the last two Planning Commission work sessions that were held on the Development Code update, and that provides an overview for this body and for the record. I just wanted to provide you with a really brief verbal update as well and touch on some things that I think were mentioned in the meeting earlier. So the Development Code update has 8 total sections in it. 3 of those sections have completed the first round of review and have been returned to the consultant for revision. Those include the administration section, the permits/procedures section, and the zoning section. The zoning section is one of the 2 heaviest lifts in this entire review. The other one is the general standards, as you know. Steering Committee just reviewed the subdivision and PUD sections last night at their meeting last evening. The Planning Commission will start reviewing or will be reviewing the subdivision and PUD sections at their February 18th meeting. At that meeting, you'll also continue the general development standards that you started back in January. Upcoming sections for review will be the specific use standards, the definition section, and objective design standards. So what this means is that we are actually seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for the first round of this review, and we are on track for a mid-May public review draft. So the sections of the development code will be coming back to staff. We anticipate sometime in April. We will work through those code drafts, and they will be forwarded to legal for legal review. And then that public review draft will be out for approximately 1 month to 6 weeks. And then we will take revisions back. The Planning Commission will also host a work session, 2-day work session or work study session, to make sure that you have ironed out every concern that you have on that draft. That'll be drop-in. That'll be at your convenience. We will be scheduling that according to the schedules that we can get the best participation. As I mentioned, I'd like to also address an item that commissioners mentioned, because this was something that occurred over the weekend. Some were able to attend, and thank you so much for doing that. It wasn't required, so there's no demerit there. But this was the Cal Poly, California Polytech University in San Luis Obispo. The community planning public outreach event was held on Saturday at the Cathedral City Library. The students did 5 tables that had interactive exercises, including where would you like to see shade? Where do you want to see safety improvements? What amenities would you like to see and where? And then how can we improve our active transportation? This was the second semester. We are currently in the second semester of student engagement. The students will be preparing a document on the revitalization policies, plans, and their findings of these 2 outreach segments that they've conducted with policy suggestions, design improvements specific to the Date Palm corridor. What I want to mention is not only for the Date Palm corridor, that's their study area, but the improvements that they suggest out of this will be replicable throughout the city. I mention this here because the student work is in conjunction with the development code update. So Cal Poly students have been in communication with Minter Harnish. The Minter Harnish team have made it no secret they are also Cal Poly graduates. So Brent, Michael, and Hannah are all alumni from the school. So once we have that document, it'll be brought forward at a future meeting. Anyway, that's my update. If you have questions about anything that's upcoming, anything that we've discussed, you can of course, you can always forward them to me in an email, call me, or we can discuss it here.
How long will we have to review the stuff that we're going to get on the 18th?
So normally the agenda goes out, I believe, on Thursdays. Is that correct? Yeah.
But is that going to be what we just reviewed at the last task force meeting? Because that was a lot of pages.
So you will see essentially the similar format same format that we've been having, which is the documents that support the questions. So the questions are the crux of the meeting, and then the documents that support that. We know it's a lot of pages. They tend to be somewhere between 60 and 90 pages per section. A lot of the material that you see is repeated, so we really want to point your attention to the meat of the matter, if you will, so that the questions that you see in the agenda packets or the questions that follow the agenda item itself are where we want to direct your attention.
Well, as much lead time as you can give us.
I think to answer your question, though, if you look at the staff report that you basically provided, on February 18th, which is the meeting that's coming up, it's fences and walls, trash and recycling. And it's not the subdivision thing that the steering committee discussed last night. Is that correct?
It will be both.
It will be both?
Yes, so we had...
And the stuff from January 21st?
Yes, so we had scheduled the subdivisions and PUDs for February 18th. Then with the continuation from the January meeting, the additional pieces got pushed. Because subdivisions is so, and for the members who were at the meeting last night, subdivision, and the conversation was very good. And it did go almost the entire 2 hours. But there were only 4 or 5 questions that came up. Most of that information is dictated by the Subdivision Map Act, so there's very little latitude that the city has with that. Most of that was intended as informational or educational for the steering committee members as background, so that they could help weigh in on the questions that we did have.
So I think we talked about this before, but I don't think there's any reason that the documents that have already gone to the steering committee can't be distributed now to the rest of the commission. That means that I understand there will be changes, things change, but it means that we've read the basis of that in the intervening 2 or 3 weeks, rather than getting a bundle of another 400 pages of documents to read through 2 or 3 days before the meeting. The problem with the agenda process, and I understand it's laid down in law, but, you know, we're all volunteers and we all have other lives as well, so we can't guarantee that the Monday and Tuesday are going to be free for us to read through a huge bundle of papers. So if you can get them to us early, then that really does help.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that we actually got those, the steering committee got those packets late, so I didn't read it at all.
Oh.
I had no time to read through it, so I'm going to be spending between now and the planning commission meeting reading it, which means why should I have that benefit that you guys don't?
Right.
Right, because I already have it. So I think what you're saying makes total sense.
Well, and what I did was, we received it on a Monday for the Tuesday meeting, and, you know, I spent a couple hours, because I don't have a life, I spent a couple hours on Monday evening, you know, going through the subdivision ordinance and everything, and I couldn't finish it. I tried. But I just think that as much lead time as you can give the commission to look at these things, the better, because it's very complex, and that way, if people do have questions, they can email them to you and make the meeting more streamlined if they know the answer to that before, you know, the meeting.
Okay, and so what I guess I can offer to you is that I can send out those draft documents. The questions will follow in the form of an agenda, so we will still have to publish the entire packet as an agenda.
Yeah, that makes
But you'll
perfect
have
sense.
it, you'll have it in advance. Okay.
Anything else for staff? Yes.
One little thing. I was going to mention the workshop we went to on Saturday in my comments, but Ms. Schultz has covered it excellently. The only thing I've just learned is that Mintier Harnish, as well as the students, are from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and today I learned our soon-to-be city manager also got his degree there. So there's quite a little synergy going on here.
Okay. Moving on to item 5, Commissioner comments. I'll start with Commissioner Bedard.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Malakoff.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but I want to congratulate our director on his achievement on becoming our city manager. I think he'll do a great job, although I'll really miss being able to pick up the phone and talk to him about planning issues. But I think it was a great choice, and I'm very happy for you, and only wish you the best. And whoever takes the position of Development Services Director has huge shoes to fill.
Yeah. And Commissioner McPhail.
We mentioned it very briefly, in the conditions of approval. This is a general boilerplate one, and it just kind of hit a light bulb with me. You know, there's language in there about CUP shall expire 2 years after City Planning Commission approval update unless granted a completed building permit application and/or time extension pursuant to Cathedral City ordinances. I was just wondering, does staff keep track, a little spreadsheet or something, of the various CUPs that are out there with the two-year clock ticking? And when that time is up, do you contact the applicant to say, hey, time's up? And if you do have that sort of data, would it be a lift to occasionally inform us, you know, that these have expired and they're not happening.
So we do have a running list of items that go to the Planning Commission and the action that the Planning Commission takes, so we can refer to that list to see what's coming up for expiration. And we endeavor to reach out to the applicants prior, like 60 days prior, 90 days prior, so they can submit it early. So,
Anything else? Okay. Vice Chair? Okay. Well, obviously want to congratulate the Director. We do know where the city manager's office is, and I have the number. It's probably the same as Charlie's was, so there's no escape, is what I'd like to say. I'd also like to, once again, we said it earlier, but I was just so impressed with the minutes that we received for this meeting. And it tied back nicely to the presentation we had on building a defensible record, because those minutes, you wouldn't even need to have watched the video. You would have been able to tell exactly what the sense of the meeting was, as well as the decisions. And I think that's something we haven't had before. I don't even want to look back 3 years and see what the minutes look like, because, if I read them again, I wouldn't even recognize that was at the meeting, never mind what we actually decided. So just kudos to the whole staff team for everything that they're doing. And that's it. City Attorney comments.
No further comments tonight, thank you.
Right. And staff comments.
I don't have any comments.
Nothing here other than just to ensure that staff gets the kudos for the staff reports and all of the work they put in. You're right, there is quite a bit of effort on the part of all of the planning staff. Sandra, Cynthia, Dom, Manny, they do an exceptional job preparing your staff reports and packets.
Thank you. And with that, I'll adjourn this meeting.